Hello everyone and welcome back to Most Amazing Top 7. Tonight, it's not just any ordinary episode. We're diving into something dark, something haunting. This time we're exploring the top 7 eerie and chilling tales from the haunted graveyards of Appalachia. Where are you watching from? Can you hear the whispers? Do you dare to uncover what's buried deep within the shadows of Appalachia's haunted graveyards? He was already standing there when I passed the church curve, leaned into the gate of that hillside graveyard like he'd grown from the rusted iron itself. Didn't move when my headlights swept across him, didn't flinch, just stood, watching my car roll past on that snaking, crumbling strip of road locals called Devil's Spine. I shouldn't have been driving that late. Not alone, not up there, but I'd promised Mama I'd clear out Grandpa's old cabin before winter set in. I'd taken too long, dragging my feet for weeks, and now the woods were brittle with frost and whispering winds. I hadn't seen another soul for hours, but I saw him. Face pale as creekstone, long coat, the color of grave moss. He didn't wave, didn't hitch, just watched. 10 miles later, I was still gripping the wheel too tight. Knuckles bone white. I told myself he was just a wanderer, some drifter making his slow way down the holler, but something in me knew better. My stomach had dropped the second I saw him, like an old fear returning home. That graveyard had no name. It never did, just crooked stones jutting from the hill like broken teeth, bordered by rust and fog and a wall of pine. The cabin sat back from the road, past a dry creek bed and up a winding trail choked with laurel and birch. I parked at the bottom. No way my car was clearing the roots this season, and climbed up with only a flashlight and a backpack. The moment I opened the door, the smell hit me. Damp wood, mold, paper rot, old dust stirred by animals I didn't want to meet. The power didn't work, but I hadn't expected it to. Grandpa'd lived simple. Propane stove, wood heat, lanterns. The last time I'd been there was his funeral, 7 years ago. We'd buried him in town, not up here. He hated the graveyard folks said was cursed, called it Hollow's Gate, though no sign ever named it so. I made a fire, ate some jerky, read a little, tried to ignore the feeling I wasn't alone, but the woods were too quiet. No night birds, no coyotes, not even the distant hum of bugs, just the sound of wind trying not to be wind, like it was holding its breath. Sometime around midnight, I heard the knock, not a door knock, not wood on wood. It came from the back wall, 3 slow taps, then silence, then again. I froze, held my breath so hard, my chest ached. The fire hissed behind me. My flashlight flickered like it sensed something I didn't. Then I heard it. My name. Not shouted, not whispered, just spoken. Eli. One word, clear as spring water. A voice I almost remembered. Not Grandpa's, not Mama's, but close. I didn't open the back door. I didn't speak. I just sat there, skin crawling, until dawn turned the black to ash. The next day, I found the footprints. They weren't boots, not shoes. Bare feet, wide splayed toes like someone who'd walked the mountain all their life. They started at the back wall and led down toward the dry creek. They didn't meander. They were straight, deliberate. I told myself it was just some old hermit, one of those mountain folk who never left. I told myself that because I had to, but I didn't believe it. That night, I dreamed of the graveyard. Not just the stones, but what lay beneath. So I was buried. Not dead, but dreaming inside a coffin. I could feel dirt pressing in around me, and above, something scraping at the wood, whispering through the soil. I woke gasping. The fire had gone cold, and the back door was open. I swear on my life, I locked it. I remember the latch clicking, but it hung there now, swinging gently on its hinges. No wind, no reason, just open. I should have left then. Packed my bag, walked to the car, and driven down to the state road, no matter the hour. But I told myself I had a job to finish. Told myself I didn't scare that easy. So I stayed one more night. Around dusk, I saw him again. Same coat, same pale face. But this time he wasn't at the graveyard. He stood in the creek bed, right where the footprints led, looking up at the cabin, looking at me. I didn't set go outside. Didn't set call out. Just stood there behind the window, not breathing. And he smiled. It wasn't right. That smile. It didn't move his eyes, didn't touch his face. Just a small, slow curl of the mouth, like something mimicking human expression. I blinked, and he was gone. That night, I nailed the back door shut. I barely slept. Just sat up by the fire, shotgun across my knees, heart hammering, listening. There was no knock, no voice, only silence. So deep it felt like it was swallowing me, until the smell hit. Dirt, wet, sour earth, like grave loam freshly dug. Then came the sound of something dragging across the roof, slow, heavy, circling, and then above me a voice. Same one as before, a whisper through wood and stone. You left me behind. I ran, out the front door, into the trees. Didn't stop to grab my bag or my keys. I ran like something old was chasing me. And maybe it was. Maybe it still is. I didn't stop until I hit the road, breath ragged, hands torn from branches. I flagged down a ranger truck at dawn. Must have looked half mad, shaking and wild-eyed. They took me into town. I told them someone had followed me, tried to break in. They sent a deputy. He found the cabin empty. No footprints, no sign of forced entry. But the nails in the back door were bent outward. I haven't yet gone back. One test. They found my car later. Keys still in the ignition, driver's door wide open. Folks asked why I was even up there. With the cold coming in and stories being what they were, I lied. Said I got spooked by a bear. Said I imagined things. But I didn't, Stet. Sometimes I dream of the graveyard again. I see the gate, rusted, twisted, and the man is always there, waiting, smiling, like he knows one day I'll come back. And this time, I once said leave. The moment my boots cracked the frost-hardened trail, I knew I shouldn't have come back. It was the smell that did it first. Wet earth, and something else. Something old. Not rot exactly, but the kind of mildew that clings to wood long buried. I pulled my flannel tighter around me and stared deeper into the woods. Even in daylight, the trees hunched together like gossiping old men, thick-limbed and heavy with secrets. This part of the Appalachian spine up near Crow's Rest Hollow don't get visitors. I should have remembered that. But when Mama died last month, she left me a box. Inside was a faded topographic map, a rusted locket with a scrap of hair, and a note. He's still out there. Make it right. No name, no explanation, just that. Mama never talked much about her family, only that they were dirt people, and we were better off in Knoxville. But I guess blood doesn't forget. Not in these mountains. So I followed the map. The trail faded after the first ridge, swallowed by underbrush and damp ferns. I'd bushwhacked another 2 miles, compass shaking in my gloved hand, until I reached the spot, a clearing. No bigger than a trailer pad. The sun barely touched it, and the wind, which had followed me like a stray dog all morning, stilled. And there it was, a grave, barely a rise in the soil. No marker, no stone, just a mound, unnatural in its symmetry, covered with dead leaves and old pine needles. The kind of spot you don't find unless you're looking. My breath caught, not from exertion, from something else. like the air didn't want me to speak. I dropped my pack, hands shaking, took out the collapsible spade. I hesitated. My whole body told me to stop, turn back, burn the map and forget this place. But Mama Sip's voice echoed in my head. Make it right. I dug. The soil came away too easy. No rocks, no roots, just loose, black dirt. After about 2 feet, I hit something soft but firm, wrapped in cloth. Maybe. I scraped around it, heart hammering like a drum in my ears. That seps when the whistling started. High and thin, like wind through broken teeth. Not a tune, just aimless, wandering, too close. I froze. Dirt-streaked hands clenched around the spade. The sound came from just beyond the tree line. I couldn't see anyone. No footsteps, just that whistle, growing sharper, like it was circling the clearing. I dropped the shovel. Hello? I called, voice cracking. The whistle stopped. Silence crushed the clearing. No birds, no squirrels, nothing. Just the thudding in my chest. I turned, slowly, scanning the tree line. Nobody. But the feeling like eyes pressing into my back tightened my neck. I looked down into the hole. The cloth wasn't cloth. It was burlap, mold-eaten and stained dark in patches. I could see the shape beneath it. Narrow, human-shaped. My stomach twisted. I reached in, meaning to pull back the edge. Just enough to see something moved. Not the bag. Beneath it, a subtle shift, like muscle under skin. I yanked my hand back, stumbling into the dirt. My heart felt like it wanted to climb out my throat. I scrambled upright, grabbed my pack, and backed away. The ground over the grave had started to sink, not cave in. Breathe, like it was exhaling. I ran. Branches clawed at my face, but I didn't stop. I followed the GPS line on my watch, too scared to notice the terrain. It didn't matter. The forest had changed. Paths I'd come in on twisted wrong. Trees looked too similar. My compass spun. I swore I passed the same gnarled birch 3 times. Something was following me. Not steps, just presence. Like when you're half awake and feel someone watching from the dark corner of your bedroom. The whistling came back, farther now, then closer, then gone, like it flitted through the trees, always just behind. I finally collapsed by a creek. My water bottle trembled in my hand as I drank. Mud stained my sleeves. A scratch across my cheek throbbed with cold. I tried to collect myself, telling myself I was just spooked, sleep-deprived, paranoid. Then I saw the boot prints. Not mine. Too big, deep, fresh. They came from the opposite bank, stopped right at the edge of the creek where I knelt, and disappeared. No crossing, no return, just ended. I didn't sleep that night. I made a fire, small and tight, under a rock overhang. Every crackle, every rustle of leaf or shift of wind made me flinch. I kept the spade beside me, gripping it like a weapon, but nothing came. Not until dawn. That seps when I found the locket. It wasn't set to mine. It sat atop my boots, clean despite the mud, identical to the one Mama left me. Same brass, same hair inside, but the initials scratched on the back were different. EC. My hands went numb. My Mama Sip's initials were HJ. I dropped it and started hiking. Fast, no food, no break, just a raw need to leave. I must have passed something important, some boundary, because the woods began to feel normal again by late afternoon. Birds returned. My compass worked. The trail reappeared like a lifeline. When I reached the parking pull-off, my truck looked like salvation, but the cab wasn't set empty. An old man sat in the passenger seat, I nearly fell over from shock, but he didn't move, just sat there. Hands folded in his lap, pale coat, corduroy collar, deep lines in his face like cracked bark. He watched me approach through the glass, calm as a corpse. I opened the door slow. "Can I help you, sir?" He nodded once. "You found it." I froze. "The grave," he said, eyes never blinking. "It calls kin. Buried wrong, forgotten." My mouth went dry. "Who was he?" The man looked out at the woods. "Edgar Cain," he said. "My brother," mean as the day was long. "Took something that weren't septas. Mama put him down herself. Said no Cain would lie in a churchyard. Buried him where the trees don't forgive." "Why me?" He finally turned to me, and his eyes were a terrible kind of sad. "Because your mama was a Cain." He got out without another word and walked toward the woods. I didn't set follow. That was 6 days ago. I haven't slept more than an hour since. I hear it sometimes. That same whistling on the radio, in the pipes, under the floorboards of my apartment. Last night I found another locket, this time on my nightstand. Different initials again. I called the county records this morning, asked about a man named Edgar Cain. No birth certificate, no death notice, nothing. Just a single incident report from 1974, a missing hiker near Crow's Rest Hollow. Last name Cain. First name Harold. My mama. I heard the footsteps before I saw anything. Not the crisp crackle of a hiker or the careless stamp of wildlife. No, these were slow, deliberate, echoing steps behind me on wet leaves. Measured, like someone trying to match my pace without getting too close. I didn't turn around. Not yet. The sun had already dipped behind the ridge, bleeding amber through the black skeletons of trees. The light in the Appalachian mountains disappears quicker than you think, like the hills swallow it whole. And I was a fool for staying past dusk, kneeling too long at the grave, letting my fingers trace the carved names like they might answer me back. I told myself, I came to pay respects, but I think I was looking for something. My mother always said, what's buried in these hills ought to stay buried, and maybe I didn't listen. My family's grave plot sits on a slope above the holler where no one lives anymore. What used to be a mining town, long dead, just a scatter of leaning shacks and rusted-out trucks with trees growing through them. I parked the Jeep at the tree line and walked the path I knew by heart, even after 15 years away. I just set that mason jar of wildflowers down between my grandparents' stones when I heard it. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. I stood, heart thudding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Hello? I called out, but my voice sounded too thin, swallowed up by the forest. Nothing answered. The leaves were still wet from last night's storm. And I was alone. At least I thought I was. There wasn't supposed to be anyone up here. That was part of the draw. No tourists. No park rangers. No phone signal. Just the woods, the wind, and the dead. I started walking fast, keeping to the trail even as the sky darkened into bruise-colored dusk. I turned once. Fast. Nothing. Just trees knotted tight together, bark the color of old ash, and a low fog beginning to creep across the ridge like it knew the way. Back in the Jeep, I slammed the door and locked it, windows fogging from my breath. I waited 5 full minutes before starting the engine, headlights cutting through the dark like blades. My hands shook so bad I dropped my keys trying to put them in the ignition. Still, nothing. Just the woods. Just me. That night, I dreamed of a man standing behind my grandfather's grave. I couldn't see his face, only the shape, tall, shoulders too wide, head tilted like he was listening to something beneath the soil. I woke in a sweat. The sheets twisted around my legs like vines. The house felt wrong. I'd been staying in my family's old cabin while trying to sort the property out for sale. It was supposed to be a quick trip, sign some papers, say goodbye to the past. But the longer I stayed, the more the house felt like a mouth closed tight around me. The next morning I found tracks in the frost outside the porch. Not boots, bare feet, large, wide 5 toes pressed deep enough to see the splay of each one. No drag marks, no sign of running, just standing, watching. I told myself it was a bear or a hunter or some local kid screwing with me, but I knew better. 3 days passed. I didn't go back to the grave. I barely went outside. At night, I heard things, not animals, not the usual night sounds of owls or coyotes or the occasional fox scream. These were heavier, closer. The creak of the porch steps with no one there, the scrape of nails on the wood siding. Once I heard breathing, slow and ragged like someone asleep right beneath my bedroom window. I stopped sleeping. I started carrying the old shotgun my grandfather kept above the fireplace. Even though it hadn't been fired in decades, the metal was cold and pitted, and I wasn't sure it would even go off. The last night I saw him, it was just past midnight, and I'd been dozing in the rocking chair, listening to the fire die in the hearth, when the sound came again. Knock, knock. Slow. Not demanding, just present. I stood up and felt every hair on my body lift. The knock came again. 3 soft taps, like the person already knew I wouldn't answer. I moved toward the door, slow and quiet. Didn't turn on the light. Just looked through the peephole, heart hammering. He was standing at the bottom of the porch steps, still too far to see clearly, but I could make out the same shape from my dream. Tall, wrong, like his limbs didn't fit together right. He didn't move, just stood there, head tilted, listening. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the corner of the room with the shotgun across my lap, praying the night would pass. When the sun rose, he was gone. I left the next morning, packed a bag, locked the house, and drove down the mountain, without looking back. But the feeling didn't go with me. Even now, 100 miles away in my apartment in Asheville, I still check the windows twice before bed. Still feel like someone's watching when I turn my back to a dark room. A few weeks ago, I had the dreams again. The same grave, the same man. But now he sets closer. I thought maybe I was just rattled. Stress, memories, something psychological. But last night, I found a smudge on my apartment window. Greasy, human-shaped, like a hand had pressed against the glass. 5 long fingers, no palm print, just the fingers. I live on the 3rd floor. I think I brought him with me, or maybe he followed. I've gone over that night 100 times in my head, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand why me. There are stories, of course. Old ones. Folklore. My grandmother used to talk about the listening man, a spirit or something worse that watched over grave sites in the mountains. Not to protect them, but to claim what was left unspoken. He don't sit, take nothing sit, unless you stir him up. She said, whisper while folding laundry or slicing apples. But if you speak his name, or stand too long in silence, he might just follow you home. I thought she was just telling stories. I thought it was all just Appalachian myth. Backwoods ghost tales told to keep kids from wandering too far into the woods. But something changed that night at the grave. Maybe it was what I said. I remember kneeling by my father's set stone, voice tight with grief and guilt, and saying, "If you sepper out there, if you can hear me, please." I didn't even finish the sentence. Didn't know what I was asking for. Now I wonder who or what did hear me. I haven't gone back to the mountains. I won set. But sometimes, I think I hear him outside, pacing, slow steps, matching mine. And some nights when I wake up and look toward the shadows pooling in the corner of my bedroom, I swear I see a shape standing there, too tall, head tilted, waiting, still listening. I knew something was wrong when the wind stopped. Not quieted, stopped, dead still, like the holler itself was holding its breath. One moment the leaves rustled against my tent, and the next, it was like the world had been wrapped in wool. No birds, no bugs, no creak of branches. Just a silence so thick I could hear the spit pop in my mouth. I sat up in my sleeping bag, heart already thudding. It wasn't the kind of silence that comforts. It was the kind that presses in, the kind that feels like it's watching you. I'd hiked up alone from Spruce Ridge, heading deeper into a patch of the Appalachians most folks avoid. No trail markers, no GPS signal, just a paper map and a bad idea. I'd read about an abandoned settlement up in there. Some logging camp turned church commune turned nothing, and figured I'd poke around for the weekend. Stupid. I know that now. I unzipped the tent slowly, trying not to breathe too loud. The moon was full, but the canopy overhead swallowed most of it. Everything looked wrong. The trees were too still, the shadows too long. There was a smell too faint but sour, like damp wood and old breath. I scanned the trees, flashlight clutched in one hand. The beam felt like it barely cut through the dark. Just trees, more trees. The little ridge I'd set up camp against, and then something caught the corner of the light. Not a shape, not movement, just a shimmer, like heat rising off pavement. But it was cold. I could see my breath, and then I heard it, a voice, whispering, barely louder than the wind that wasn't blowing. "Why spet you come back?" I froze. My legs didn't feel like they belonged to me. The voice was low, like a man's, but it wasn't close. It sounded like it came from under the ground. "We said goodbye, didn't it?" I backed toward the tent, my boots crunching dry leaves loud enough to make me wince. Another voice answered, higher this time. Woman maybe, but twisted, like it was caught in a throat that hadn't spoken in years. "You don't know the way." I snapped, grabbed my pack, half zipped and lumpy, and took off into the trees. No plan, no direction, just away. The flashlight jittered across bark and root, branches whipping my arms. The voices followed, not louder, not closer, just there. Too late. Turn him around, bury him deep. My legs ached, lungs burning. I don't know how far I ran. 10 minutes, an hour. The woods don't give you time like they should, but eventually the ground leveled out, and the trees opened into a clearing I hadn't seen on the map. And in the clearing, there was a cemetery, half swallowed by vines and fog, with tombstones cracked like old teeth. Some of them had names, weather-worn and half missing, but most were blank, just stone, leaning, watching. I should have turned and kept running. I know that, but I walked forward instead. One foot, then the other, like the air was pulling me. The silence changed in that clearing. It wasn't absence anymore. It was waiting. There was a little iron gate, rusted open, swinging on one hinge. It didn't creak, just moved a little in a wind I couldn't feel. I stepped inside, and every hair on my body lifted. There was something under the ground, listening. A low vibration ran up through the soles of my boots. My jaw tickled. My stomach turned, and then the voices came back. Not whispers now, singing, humming, a dozen of them, maybe more. No words I could understand, just the sound of old throats and old grief, the kind of song you don't want to remember hearing. I dropped to my knees, not because I meant to, because my body quit, my head filled with pressure, like diving too deep too fast. I clutched the dirt. It was wet, warm, and I saw something, not with my eyes, with whatever part of me dreams. Images, flickers, a row of children standing on the cemetery's edge, hands folded, faces slack, men digging, women crying with their mouths sewn shut, a church, white clapboard, burning without flames, smoke rising, but the air around it was clear, and in the smoke, a shape, not a monster, not a ghost, a hole, a tear in the air, a place that wasn't sit. I wanted to scream, and then hands on my shoulders, not cold, not bony, human. I whipped around, empty. I ran again. This time I didn't look back. I don't know how I found the ridge again. The map was gone, my pack half empty, my shirt torn. I don't remember the trees. I just remember the sound returning, slowly, like someone turning up the volume on a broken radio. A bird call, a branch snapping, my own ragged breathing. I collapsed next to the fire pit I'd built earlier that day, shaking, teeth chattering. There were bruises on my arms where fingers had gripped me, but no one had touched me. Right? I left before dawn. Didn't pack. Just walked until I hit gravel and cell service. Didn't tell anyone what I saw. Not really. Said I got turned around. Spent a cold night in the woods. Let them think I was stupid. But I looked it up. Weeks later, when I started hearing humming in my sleep, there was a settlement. Not on most maps. Founded 1891, died 1904. Fire in the church killed 12. Another 8 disappeared in the weeks after. Folks stopped talking about it. Land went unclaimed. No cemetery officially listed, but the photos they had, one grainy black and white, snapped before the fire, showed it plain as day. Same clearing, same stones. One in the center, taller than the rest. No name, just a carving. I didn't see it that night. But in the photo it's clear. A circle, inside it, an open eye, and under it, 4 words. Let no one return. I've tried to forget. Moved since. Don't hike anymore. Can't stand the sound of wind in the trees. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. That humming. And worse than that, sometimes I hum back. I knew something was wrong the moment the path disappeared. One minute I was following the ridgeline trail, boot soles crunching dry leaves, and the next I was staring at a wall of rhododendron that hadn't been there before. It didn't make sense. I hadn't turned, hadn't drifted off trail. I'm no tourist. Born in Boone, raised by a grandfather who could track deer prints through mist. But that thicket, it came out of nowhere, dense and dark like it was hiding something. I turned around. The trail was gone. My breath caught. The quiet pressed in like wet wool. No birds, no wind, just the sound of my own pulse scraping the inside of my ears. I wasn't lost. Not yet. I told myself that, said it out loud like a prayer. Just turned around a bit, I muttered. But even my voice sounded too loud, like I was intruding on something. The sun dipped low behind the trees. I checked my compass. It spun once, twice, then held still, needle pointing north. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't supposed to be here, like I'd stepped somewhere that wasn't on any map. I started walking, slow, deliberate, marking landmarks with my eyes. I passed the same mossy boulder twice, the same crooked poplar with claw-like branches. That seps when I smelled it. Rot. Old, wet rot. Like mushrooms left in a plastic bag too long, but worse, mixed with something metallic. I covered my nose with my sleeve and pushed on, hoping to get higher ground before night fell. But as I climbed, the smell grew stronger, like it was following me. Then I saw the fence. Rust-bitten iron, almost consumed by ivy, running in a wide circle around a clearing I swear hadn't been there 10 minutes before. At its center stood a dozen or so crumbling tombstones, jagged and tilting like broken teeth. No path led in or out. Just that fence, and beyond it, silence. The stones were old, real old, No names I could read, just faint carvings worn down by wind and time. One had a carving of a sheep. Another, a bird with a cracked beak. Child graves, maybe. My gut twisted. But that sep's not what made me stop cold. It was the shadow. Between two stones, standing upright. Still, it didn't move, but it was there. Blacker than the dark around it. No shape, just absence. Like someone had cut a hole in the world and forgot to patch it up. I blinked. It was gone. I didn't imagine it. I know I didn't. My legs refused to move for a long second and my breath came shallow. Every nerve in me screamed to run. But to where? Something rustled behind me, low like a dragging footstep on wet leaves. I spun around. Nothing, but the rot smell hit harder, fresher. I stumbled backward, hand gripping the fence for balance. Rust bit into my palm. That sips when I saw it etched on one of the tombstones, barely visible in the dying light. He who walks in borrowed skin. I backed away. My foot caught on a root. I hit the ground hard, mouth filling with the taste of dirt and copper, dazed. I looked up, and the shadow was closer now. Not between the tombstones anymore. Just outside the fence. Still no shape. Just wrongness. As if something was wearing the darkness. I scrambled up and ran. Branches slapped my face. The forest tore at me. I didn't care. I just ran. But the woods had changed. Every turn looped me back toward that clearing. My breath hitched when I broke the tree line again and saw the rusted fence. Same tombstones. Same smell. Same shadow. Now at the gate. I don't remember falling asleep. Just remember cold and a high, keening sound that threaded through the trees like a needle in flesh. When I woke, it was morning. The forest looked normal. Birds chirped. The sun was up. My pack was still zipped tight. Compass still pointed north. I might have believed it was all a dream, if not for the fresh cut on my palm, or the smear of rust on my shirt, or the faint smell of rot still clinging to my clothes. That was a year ago. I don't hike anymore. Moved out of the mountains. Even sold Papa's old cabin. I thought distance might help. It didn't. Sometimes I wake up and smell it. Just a hint of that same decay curling under my doorframe like smoke. Sometimes I see it. Only in reflections. Dark spots in mirrors that don't belong to me. Movement where there shouldn't be. And once, last winter, I found a footprint in the snow outside my apartment. A bare footprint. 5 toes, long stride. No shoe tread. Too large for a man. Too perfect to be real. I tried to tell a park ranger once about the shadow. The graves, the thing between the stones. He just looked at me a long time and said, "Ain't sep no cemetery up there. That side of the ridge was cleared for logging in the 50s. I told him I saw it. Touched the fence. Smelled it. He nodded slow. "Some places don't take kindly to being walked through," he said. "Sometimes they remember you." I haven't gone back. One stepped, but I think, no. I know that something followed me out. It wears faces now. I see them in crowds, in corners. Familiar but wrong. Eyes too still, skin too tight. Borrowed. I try not to look, but I feel it watching, still waiting, still wearing me thin. I should have turned back the moment the trees swallowed the last bar of cell service, but the silence after the signal died. It wasn't peace, it was weight. Heavy, watching, like something knew I was trespassing before I knew I was lost. They told me not to go alone. Sheriff Darnell said the path past Miller's Creek ain't kept. An old man Kettering at the bait shop muttered that the woods out there don't forget. But I wasn't there for them. I was there for her. Marla. She vanished near High Morrow last fall. just up and gone on a day hike like she didn't have a mother waiting, like I didn't have a ring buried in my glove box. No answers, no scent trail, just a shredded map found weeks later near a moss-covered headstone that didn't have a name. That's where I started. The graveyard. They don't mark it on any map. You only find it by following a dry creek bed until the air turns cold, even in September. I followed it all morning. Sunlight died behind a shroud of twisted birch trees, and the air smelled like copper and wet soil. My boots sank in the muck like the land was trying to hold me there. And then I saw it, less a graveyard than a patch of rotting stone teeth scattered across a shallow hill. The stones were different sizes, old and pitted, no names. Some weren't even shaped like markers, just slabs jammed upright in the dirt. I counted 17. That felt wrong. I turned back to count again. 16. That's when the wind stopped. Not died down, stopped. All sound fell out of the air like it had been sliced away. My own breath turned thunderous in my ears, and I felt a pressure in my sinuses like I'd climbed too fast. I should have turned back then, but I saw something between two stones, something white, fabric. I moved closer, kneeling down. A scrap of cotton, tattered but unmistakably from the jacket Marla always wore, blue flannel, cream lining. My chest collapsed around a sharp breath. My fingers shook as I reached for it. That seps when I heard it, a footstep behind me. Slow, wet, crunch. I turned fast, heart slamming. But the clearing was empty, just the crooked stones and that awful silence pressing against my eardrums. But I know what I heard. It wasn't an animal. It was the deliberate weight of a heel. Marla. I croaked, my throat dry as dust. Is someone there? No answer. Only then did I realize I was sweating. Despite the cold, my shirt clung to me. My back slick, my legs had gone weak, and I didn't remember standing. I stuffed the fabric into my jacket pocket. I'm leaving now, I said aloud, as if the trees needed to hear me, as if something was listening. I backed away from the stones. Every step felt like I was peeling myself off the earth. The sun had shifted, or I had. Nothing looked the same. The creek bed was gone. I turned, trying to orient myself, but the trees were too close now. The underbrush, too thick. My breath quickened. I turned again. Still the graveyard behind me. I walked faster, breaking twigs underfoot. The silence followed. And then the screaming started. Not loud, faint, distant, a woman's voice, just on the edge of hearing, like it came through a thick wall of water. I froze. My mind reached for reason. Wind? Echo? Some hunter's weird call? But the scream came again. Closer. Help. That broke me. I ran. Branches clawed my arms. Thorns tore my pants. The air felt syrup thick. I ran until my lungs screamed and my legs folded under me, collapsing against a moss-slick log. Then, nothing. Just breath. Mine. Fast. Shallow. Until I heard breathing that wasn't set mine. It came from behind the log. Raspy. Too slow. Like someone inhaling through a throat half full of liquid. I didn't look. I couldn't. I crawled backward, palms muddy, knees raw. Whatever it was didn't follow. Not yet. I turned and stumbled forward, trying to find high ground. My compass spun in my palm. Useless. My watch had stopped. My tongue was thick in my mouth and I could taste iron. At some point, I found a shack, more ruin than shelter. A hunter's blind, maybe, or some forgotten place. Long before maps mattered, the door was off its hinges, the floor sagging in the middle, but it had walls. I forced myself inside and barricaded the entrance with broken planks. Night had fallen fast. Too fast. I curled in the corner, knees to chest, Marla's fabric clenched in my hand like a talisman. And then the whispering started. Not words. Not really. Just the shape of speech. Mouth sounds pressed against the outside walls. I heard footsteps circling. Then silence. Then a knock. 3 soft taps. I don't know how long I stayed frozen. My mind spiraled. Folklore, my grandmother used to murmur. Stories of the yarn spinners. Voices that pulled you off trail to sew your tongue shut. I passed out at some point. Or maybe I just lost time. Because the next thing I knew, light was streaming through a gap in the boards. The whispering was gone. So were the footsteps. I didn't wait. I forced myself out, legs numb and brain on fire. I walked toward the slope where the sun peeked through. Hours passed. Maybe more. The trees began to thin. Birds returned. I smelled smoke, pine and ash. Then voices. Real ones, sharp human tones. Search party. They said I set only been gone a day. 24 hours. But my body felt aged, skin sunken, knees wrong. Something inside me shifted in that forest, like a wire pulled too tight and left to fray. They said they'd found the graveyard before, years back. No burials on record. Locals call it the memory patch. Some say it's just old settler plots. Others say different. I didn't tell them about the scream or the voice at the door. I didn't mention the extra footstep I still hear behind mine sometimes, or how Marla's fabric was gone from my pocket when I got out. But sometimes at night, I wake up to 3 soft knocks at my door, and I never, ever answer. I knew I shouldn't have gone back up there. Not alone. Not after dark, not after what happened to Uncle Jamie. But grief makes a fool out of man. Makes you think you're stronger than the stories. That the past don't cling to dirt like rot. I had no business wandering into the crooked hills behind Black Hollow, much less into a graveyard barely anyone remembered. The cemetery had no name. Just a fenced patch of earth tangled in chokecherry and rusting iron, nestled high where even the wind seemed wary to whisper. You wouldn't find it on no map. But the old-timers in the hollow knew. They just didn't speak of it. Not unless they'd been drinking too hard or were too close to death to care. I should have paid more mind to the way my mama's voice trembled when I told her I was going up there to pay respects to Jamie. He'd been the last one to talk about the Watchers with any real fear in his eyes, like he'd seen something the war couldn't explain. I thought it was his mind unraveling after years of being alone. Now I ain't so sure. It started with the silence. Not the normal hush of deep woods where the wind whispers through the pine. This was thick silence. Heavy, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. The kind that pressed in on you, made your ears ring just to remind you they were still working. I'd been hiking nearly an hour, the path turning from deer trail to barely there mossy stones, when the quiet wrapped around me like wet wool. Even the cicadas had stopped. I should have turned back, but pride is a hard thing to swallow, and Jamie was my blood. I'd buried him 2 weeks back, and guilt was already coiling in my gut like a cold snake. He'd asked for his ashes to be scattered near the Watchers, said they'd been waiting on him for years. I thought it was nonsense. A dying man's riddle. Now I ain't sure it was ever a riddle at all. The iron gate stood crooked. One hinge broken, so it leaned like a drunk. I stepped through and immediately smelled it. That loamy, sweet, sick stench of damp decay and something older. Not death. Not quite. Like mold in a forgotten place. The kind that makes you breathe shallow without meaning to. The headstones were worn smooth. No names I could make out. Just lichen-covered shapes. Some leaning like they were whispering into one another. I scattered Jamie's ashes near a stone that sat low and sunken, half swallowed by the earth. The wind kicked up just then. A low moan dragging through the trees, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood straight. That seps when I felt it. Not heard, felt. Eyes on me. I turned fast. heart already knocking in my ribs. Nothing. Just the trees. Black bark slick with rain, their branches curled like fingers, but the feeling didn't go. If anything, it deepened, a weight on the back of my head like something was just behind me, breathing slow, watching. I walked out of there, faster than I came in. Eyes forward, mouth dry. I didn't run, don't know why, but every instinct screamed at me to get away, quietly, like if I moved too fast, it'd notice. Whatever it was, the descent back toward the hollow was quicker, but the trail seemed different. Trees closer, sky darker, like the land had shifted just enough to disorient me. I told myself it was the dusk, but then the quiet followed me. No crickets, no birds, just the sound of my boots on wet leaves and my breath too loud in my ears. Then I heard the knockin' steps. At first I thought it was a branch, or maybe a woodpecker, but it came again. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate, hollow, like on a door, not behind me, not ahead, beside me. I stopped dead, eyes scanning the trees. My mouth went dry as dust. There were no cabins up here, no people, just forest, thick and old. I turned slow, heart thrashing, and saw the tree. It was big. An oak, I think, but wrong somehow. Gnarled, twisted more than it should have been. And in the bark, maybe 4 feet off the ground, were 3 deep indents, fresh, like someone had rapped hard with knuckles made of stone. The feeling of being watched grew sharp then, cutting like a hot wire in my chest. I turned back to the trail and walked faster. Not quite running, not yet. My thoughts were wild, breath-catching in my throat like I'd swallowed ash. Every shadow looked too deep. Every root looked like a hand stretching up from the dirt. I don't remember how long I walked, but the trail never ended. It just kept stretching, bending in ways that made no sense. I should have been back by now. I should have seen the creek, the deer blind, anything familiar. That saps when I saw the second gate. Just like the first, same rust, same crooked lean, same silent, nameless graveyard behind it. Only this time, I hadn't turned around. I stared at it, heart thundering so loud I thought it had burst. My throat clenched. I took a step forward, as if drawn, and that's when I noticed the headstone where I'd scattered Jamie's ashes was clean. No sign of ash, no footprints, no sign I'd ever been there. But something else was different. A new grave. Fresh dirt, no grass, no stone, just a mound. Long, man-shaped. I backed away slow, trying not to blink too long, not to look away. Every instinct was screaming now. Run, scream, don't look back. But I couldn't move fast, not with the air thick like syrup and the feeling of eyes drilling into my spine. That's when I heard it. A whisper, soft and low, like wind curling through a hollow log. One more. I ran. I tore down that mountain, like the devil himself was clawing at my boots. Branches whipped my face. My lungs burned, and still I ran. I didn't stop till I hit the edge of the hollow and collapsed on Mama's porch, gasping, sobbing like a boy. She didn't ask questions, just pulled me inside, locked the door, lit every lamp, and made strong tea with shaking hands. I couldn't speak for hours. When I did, I told her what I saw, what I felt. She went pale, nodded once, and said only this. Jamie said they follow. If you look too long, said they like folks who come back a second time. I never went back, but sometimes, late at night, I still hear the knocking. 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate, always on the wall near my bed. No one else hears it. And sometimes when I dream, I sit back there, at the gate, and the fresh grave has a stone now, and my name is on it.